Why are people watching the show now?
I think Little House on the Prairie is a reminder of when things were simpler for us.
When asked why she is now stepping up, Melissa Gilbert first said nothing about Dean Butler in all these years. Her recent revelation caught everyone off guard, including her devoted fan base and those holding out hope for the happily ever after of Laura and Almanzo. Did she find her soulmate in Dean? Was the spark between them genuine, or was it staged? What exactly has Melissa been concealing for all these years? You might never view that legendary TV romance the same way after hearing what she ultimately revealed, so be sure to stay to the very end. Melissa Gilbert is well known to anybody who watched Little House on the Prairie as a child. Her on-screen romance with Dean Butler is what most people remember her for. That part alone made her famous, so okay, let's be honest. Word on the street was that the show was fantastic. A modest wooden cottage in the middle of nowhere was the setting for the beloved Little House on the Prairie series. They weren't wealthy materially, but they were wealthy intangibly by their relationships with one another. But they didn't always have it easy. Occasionally, harsh winters, illnesses, or storms would strike. They persisted, nevertheless. Everyone pitched in to assist. The neighbors were taken care of, and everyone did their best to do the right thing. Laura Ingalls, a curious and kind young girl, was the protagonist of the novel. She may not have had a phone or a lot of material possessions, but her tale was unique because of the adventure, love, and family she had. The show was well received by viewers because it highlighted the importance of family, generosity, and perseverance in the face of adversity. Melissa Gilbert, a teenage actress, portrayed the role of Laura. She began portraying the part at the tender age of 10. Truthfully, viewers felt as though they knew her from her time spent watching her develop on film. She showed them her joy, sadness, and life lessons on a weekly basis. The program allowed her character to mature with her. After falling in love, Laura began attending classes and pitching in around the house. Things are about to get interesting now. Dean Butler, who played Almanzo Wilder, the love interest of Laura, joined the cast of the series. The instant Dean stepped onto the screen, viewers could tell he was someone they could trust because of his powerful charm, kindness, and composure. There was an audible flutter in Laura's heart the second she laid eyes on Almanzo. Their bond appeared to be as genuine as that. The audience believed Laura and Almanzo's love story, not merely witnessed it. Fans began to wonder whether they were actually dating outside of the show because of how genuine their relationship felt. You could have thought it was more than acting during the wedding moments because of how genuine he appeared at her. Behind the scenes, everyone thought something was off. To top it all off, those were the eras when celebrities barely used social media and posted very little content online. Only episodes and a handful of interviews in publications were available to quench our thirst for more, as there were no Instagram feeds or behind-the-scenes video. Everything was much more enchanted by that air of mystery. Many assumed that Melissa and Dean were having an affair. Melissa and Dean, however, avoided discussing their relationship on air. Years passed with no word from them. They remained silent about the matter. It was as if they abandoned all attempt at premeditation. And you know what? Why? Because the audience's fantasies were free to run wild. Nothing was ever revealed behind the scenes of the lovely relationship. Were they really close companions? What if they were romantically involved? On the other hand, was it all simply superb acting? For decades, fans were left in the dark. One of the most prominent aspects of the program, however, was the romance between Laura and Almanzo. It brought emotion to the show. Optimism was restored among believers. Dean Butler and Melissa Gilbert became famous as a result. viewers gathered in to see the blossoming of romance as much as prairie life. However, there are occasions when the depictions on television do not accurately reflect the actual events, and the enquiries persisted throughout the years. In the background, what was happening between Melissa and Dean? For what reason did they keep quiet about it? What was the reality beyond everything else? Melissa, after remaining silent for so long, is now prepared to speak. Melissa Gilbert's story didn't begin on the prairie, so let's go back a little before we get into the facts about her and Dean. Before she met Little House on the Prairie, her life took many unexpected turns. Unlike Laura Ingalls, she was not born into a simple existence on a farm. She has a very different narrative. She had a long and arduous journey before she became a TV celebrity. Moving on from the prairie fields, let's examine the little girl who captivated us with her sunbonnet and braids. Gaining insight into her character will help us better appreciate her relationship with Dean Butler. Melissa Gilbert was a small girl born in Los Angeles, California, on May 8, 1964, before she became renowned for her braids. Paul Gilbert, an actor and comedian, and Barbara Crane, an actress and dancer, adopted her the day she was born. There were bumps in the road for Melissa as she became a member of a celebrity family from that point on. Despite having supportive parents, she had a tumultuous upbringing, particularly in figuring out her role in a family of entertainers. Her adopted father, Paul Gilbert, was a witty and kind man. On several occasions, he brought Melissa along to concerts and auditions. From an early age on, she was immersed in the world of television, where cameras, lights, and performers were commonplace. She was already well on her way to stardom, even if she hadn't quite figured it out yet. She started appearing in ads when she was just 7 years old. Her charisma shone through. She was simply herself. No gimmicks or showboating. Her beautiful eyes and natural acting chops won the casting directors. Shortly after, she began landing employment on television. She accomplished just enough commercial work and tiny parts to attract people to take notice. What followed was a life-altering audition that Melissa attended when she was 9 years old. The creators of Little House on the Prairie were seeking an exceptional actress who could embody the show's protagonist, Laura Ingalls, and her adventurous spirit. She auditioned for the part. Her audition with Michael Landon, the show's star and producer, was the deciding factor. Michael not only performed the principal role, but also that of Charles Ingalls, the loving and dedicated father of Laura Ingalls. Melissa loved him on screen, but he meant considerably more to her off-screen. Michael took on the role of a father figure in her life the moment they met. Unlike other people, he noticed a quality in her. He looked out for her, shielded her from harm, and made her feel at home. Following the divorce of her adoptive parents and the subsequent estrangement from her biological father, Melissa says that Michael became a father figure to her. The camaraderie between them, nevertheless, persisted even after the cameras stopped rolling. Melissa was warmly welcomed into Michael's actual family. Particularly his daughter Leslie, she enjoyed spending time with him and his children. Like sisters, they got close via sleepovers and secret sharing. Melissa felt liked and welcomed at the Landon household, which was like a second home to her. That was crucial for a young Hollywood lady. Not everything in Melissa's real life was peachy. After her parents' marriage failed, she felt torn between the child star lifestyle and the shy, confused feelings of a little girl attempting to find her place in the world. However, Michael never left. Just a phone call away, he was there for her whenever she needed counsel, felt lost, or was uncertain about her future. Melissa will never forget the impact of that type of relationship. Michael remains one of the most influential persons in her life, even after all these years have passed. She gained the confidence to trust in herself as a result of his belief in her. To her, that set was like a second home. She was close with her co-stars, including Alison Arngrim, Nellie Oleson, and the three of them had many memorable experiences together, including sharing jokes and new knowledge. She developed personally and professionally as a result of these friendships. Having spent years on Little House on the Prairie, Melissa had recorded emotional moments, dealt with difficult issues, and carried the program through big storylines by the time she was in her teens. She was now able to handle the spotlight, accept constructive criticism, and remain grounded. The addition of Almanzo Wilder, however, was the most significant alteration. Just like Laura, Melissa was maturing. Dean Butler arrived just in time for her character to have her first love encounter. There was a dramatic change the moment Dean entered the set. Their on-screen romance, Laura and Almanzo, won over viewers' hearts. Their narrative captivated audiences due to the undeniable chemistry between them. Melissa, however, was still grappling with the implications of acting out a romance and the impact on her psyche when onlookers began to question the authenticity of her romance. Melissa was so young when she had no idea what love was. Was what she was experiencing genuine or an act? What lasting impact did her pretense of falling in love have on her? The world witnessed a lovely, courageous, innocent girl with two plats sprinting over vast fields at a snail's pace. Melissa, though, was only a girl growing up in the spotlight, and she had her fair share of challenges. She had a blast at first because she was just 9 years old when she played the role of Laura. The whole affair seemed surreal. She could ride horses, dress up in clothes, and play on a stage that transported her to another era. But as the years went by and Melissa grew older, she started to change on the inside. Playing the part, which had a mystical quality before, became burdensome. Melissa sacrificed her school days and after-school social life to work long hours on set. She was required to repeat emotional performances, memorize pages of lines, and obey adults' commands. Becoming a kid actress may have been enjoyable on television, but in actuality, there was a great deal of pressure. Melissa had to maintain an air of perpetual perfection, at least in the opinion of the general public, which only added to the difficulty. She was famously known as Laura. Approached by complete strangers, they would demand that she mimic the charming character from the program. However, she was not Laura. Rather, she was a typical adolescent girl. This new reality started to perplex her in some way. When Melissa was a teenager, she began to wonder things like, who am I? In what ways does Laura's story intersect with mine? Challenges arose. No one seemed to care that she was actually a real person under all that hair and a bonnet. Instead, they treated her like a character. Raising a family in the limelight was challenging. The fact that everyone else seemed to know her identity made it much more difficult to discover her true identity. That was only the beginning. Having Dean, a new character, presented as her love interest and then as her husband, was incredibly uncomfortable and embarrassing for her behind the scenes. Even though she hadn't had a lover in real life yet, she was nevertheless expected to display romantic passion on screen. She came clean later on that shooting those sequences with Dean was an uncomfortable and difficult experience. Despite Dean's professionalism and kindness, the situation remained challenging for a girl of 15 who was only beginning to understand her emotions. The fans' incessant curiosity as to whether or not they were actually dating added even more stress. Playing out that romance was like entering another person's life for Melissa. She aspired to achieve success. To make her admirers happy was her goal. And yet, on the inside, she occasionally felt disoriented. Even though she was only a young girl trying to understand love, she was already practicing the role of a woman in love. Along with the emotional uncertainty that came with this responsibility came the weight of expectations. Every scenario required her to smile and appear attractive. Additionally, she had to persuade millions of people that this mature love tale made sense, even if she wasn't fully prepared herself. Melissa was coping with her own world of pressure, bewilderment, and quest for identity as the world around her cheered on Laura and Almanzo's romance. While filming Little House on the Prairie, Melissa also struggled with misophonia, a condition in which she would become extremely agitated or uncomfortable at the sound of even the most inaudible sounds, such as chewing or tapping, even though no one else would hear them. She lacked a label for her emotions because the disease had not been medically defined at that time. She subsequently discussed the incident in a People magazine article. When were the cameras discontinued? In the privacy of her own home, what did Melissa endure? Playing the lead in the 1981 film adaptation of Splendor in the Grass felt like a huge leap forward for Melissa's acting career. But there were shackles attached to this job that made her doubt herself and her value. The production crew and costume department were rather particular about her on-screen appearance. The innocent, plain appearance of Laura Ingalls had vanished. The expectation instead was that Melissa would undergo a metamorphosis into a stunning young woman who would adhere rigidly to the standards of Hollywood beauty. At first, she felt awkward and out of place with the clothing selections, extremely different from the modest prairie dresses she wore in Little House. These garments were skin-tight and exposed. Her hairstyle, top cuts, and skirt lengths were all carefully considered. Studio brass desired Melissa to portray the archetypal Hollywood starlet, a captivating presence who could win over fans with her good looks as much as her performance. There was more to this unexpected fixation on her looks than simply her clothes. The media and the general public took note of Melissa's new look, and she soon found herself scrutinized. Everyone from fans to critics began gushing over her new look, including her physique and features. Not all of it was nice. Some people were quite critical of her since she had changed so much from the TV girl they adored. The demand to maintain that image of glitz and glamour intensified. Facing these expectations at the tender age of 18, Melissa took the option that many young Hollywood actors face. She decided to get cosmetic surgery. Not long after turning 18, she had plastic surgery on her nose. Although the procedure was not a big deal, as she put it in her memoir, Prairie Tale, the reality was far more challenging. Severe pain and suffering were her post-procedure experiences. After the operation, her face stung like hell, she wrote. Large pieces of gauze soaked in liquid substances were used to stuff my nose in order to alleviate the agony. The difficult recuperation process did not begin with the operation. 2 further operations were necessary to address complications stemming from the initial procedure. The trip was emotionally and physically taxing. Melissa did more than that, though. She opted to receive breast implants at a later date as well. Melissa was preoccupied with the conflict between her desire to feel secure and the enormous pressure to conform to the beauty standards set by the Hollywood business. In a field where physical attractiveness is frequently the primary criterion for promotion, it was more than simply about looking good. After years of making these adjustments, Melissa finally made a brave and sincere choice. She stopped coloring her hair red in 2015 and got her breast implants removed the same year. Removing the implants allowed her to regain control over her own body and health, which she described as one of the smartest things I've ever done in an interview with People magazine. It was a watershed moment when she stopped attempting to conform to Hollywood standards and started being herself. She is now outspoken about the harmful effects of Hollywood's high beauty standards on women. She spoke candidly about her dissatisfaction with terms like anti-aging in an interview with Prevention magazine, stating, "There's no such thing. It's insulting and humiliating." For her, "I'm aging gratefully," meaning that she views aging as an opportunity rather than a concern. "It is a part of my identity to desire to see each and every mark and line." From this fresh vantage point, Melissa's progress is clearly visible. Once an actress who altered her look to satisfy Hollywood, she is now an advocate for accepting one's age and one's body. She urges people to accept themselves exactly as they are, rather than striving for goals that will never come true. One name remains behind Melissa's new beginning: Dean Butler. Do you know where they stand now? What was her last secret? Persist with us while we explore further. Melissa is unafraid to tell it how it is. After decades of anticipation, she finally lets her admirers in on the secret in her memoir, Prairie Tale. "I was 15 and he was 23, she confesses. "I appeared to be a boy. I had the physique of a boy. A tiny girl here. Not exactly the idyllic TV romance that viewers had hoped for, and I had to behave as though I were falling for an adult male." She was a self-conscious adolescent who felt awkward about being asked to kiss a man who was over 10 years her senior. Their first kiss was broadcasted live to the country. All she had was a screenplay that required her to be infatuated, some lights, and a camera. No rehearsal, no actual chemistry. According to Melissa's book, she described herself as terrified and the kiss as awkward and weird. She compared herself to a child acting out a woman role. "Just like Dean, I knew it. He made an effort to be polite and professional in interviews, although he did acknowledge feeling the age gap." The shocking part, though, is that Melissa admitted she had a genuine infatuation on someone other than Dean. She later dated seriously, although her heart was with adolescent star Rob Lowe at the moment. Dean, in contrast, was more like an encouraging colleague. "It was never romantic," she said, but the writers were unconcerned. Dean was like a big brother, was still appropriate. The audience bought into her every week as she pretended to be infatuated with Dean. Surprisingly, there was more respect than animosity or love going on behind the scenes. No matter what, Dean remained serene, kind, and patient. He reportedly never did anything to make Melissa feel awkward or crossed a boundary. She was grateful for his thoughtfulness and the fact that he treated her more like a person than a co-star. The world became engrossed with what was really simply two individuals attempting to complete their task. As time went on, their on-screen relationship grew into a legendary TV love tale. Prior to the invention of hashtags, Laura and Almanzo possessed #couple goals. A large number of fans sent letters requesting additional scenes, kisses, and content. However, Melissa was still a regular adolescent girl dealing with the pressures of stardom, social awkwardness, and the emotional ups and downs of coming of age in the spotlight. She stated, "There was no spark between us," in a CBS interview. "It wasn't like that. And although that might break some hearts, it also highlights how great their on-screen accomplishments were. Acting, not chemistry, was at work there." Prairie Man, Dean Butler's autobiography, and interviews both offered his perspective on the events. "We had to construct a convincing relationship, and Melissa made it effortless," he stated. "She was determined, gifted, and courageous," he said, taking his responsibilities as Almanzo and Melissa's protector very seriously, despite the obvious challenges posed by their age difference. He went so far as to say that he felt tremendous pressure from the network and the viewers to keep it all authentic. However, despite the lack of romance, he and Melissa managed to make magic. Melissa and Dean continued to be a topic of conversation long after the program had concluded. They may have been secretly in love, several people speculated. Much speculation ensued. Interviewees sought out a major secret by asking pointed questions. However, Melissa was truthful at all times. She told Entertainment Weekly, "We were never more than co-stars. As a result, I was only acting." The plot has a certain sweetness, though, and the performance is superb. Melissa and Dean reunited for a TV program in 2014 when Melissa turned 50. The bond persisted, but this time it revolved around recollections. They embraced, grinned, and reminisced about their days as the beloved TV couple, not because they were truly romantically involved, but because they ensured that we believed it. Melissa has discussed Dean's influence on that time in her life in interviews. "He remained a constant during that extremely uncertain period," she claimed. "And for that, I will be eternally thankful." What we have here isn't a hot love tale, but rather a genuine relationship that has weathered inevitable controversies and scrutiny. Melissa has finally spoken up, so her followers can stop worrying about whether or not there was a hidden romance, scandal, or love affair going on behind closed doors. Still, what they had was extraordinary and lovely. Two complete strangers who became cinematic icons after meeting as strangers and leaving with a connection stronger than love itself, forged through decades of shared history, care, and trust. It felt more like Melissa's childhood was coming to a close when Little House on the Prairie ended than a television program. Melissa and Dean continued to be a topic of conversation long after the program had concluded. They may have been secretly in love, several people speculated. Much speculation ensued. Interviewees sought out a major secret by asking pointed questions. However, Melissa was truthful at all times. She told Entertainment Weekly, "We were never more than co-stars." Her bunches continued to draw attention as she dashed through wheat fields. As a genuine woman, she yearned to do more, be more, and discover her full potential. However, young ladies attempting a comeback in Hollywood weren't always treated kindly, particularly if they had previously starred as child stars. Melissa, nevertheless, persisted. Her acting career spanned television, film, and the stage. Her portrayal of darker, more powerful characters in Choices of the Heart and subsequent Babylon was one of her most memorable performances. She was also a Broadway star and voice actor. She was hell-bent on staying in the spotlight, so she gave it her all. But there were bumps in the road off-screen as well. Her marriage to actor Bo Brinkman and her lengthy affair with Rob Lowe were both highly publicized romances. She had a son, Dakota, from that relationship, but they eventually divorced. She went on to have a mixed family with her marriage to fellow actor Bruce Boxleitner. Although Melissa's second marriage also ended in divorce, it did provide her with two stepsons and the life experiences that would inspire her writing. Melissa spoke openly about her difficulties. She discussed her struggles with addiction, insecurity, heartbreak, and the relentless need to be flawless in her memoir, Prairie Tale. Alcoholism, botched plastic procedures, and a general lack of direction in her life were all things she acknowledged. "There were moments I didn't recognize myself anymore." However, rather than concealing her own feelings, she bravely shared them. Because of her candor, her admirers adored her even more. Plus, she struggled with health problems. She had surgery for her neck and spine in her 40s following a fall on Dancing with the Stars, but she persisted in her pursuits despite the agony. Once again, she was in the news in 2016, but this time for political reasons. Melissa was a candidate for the 8th Congressional District of Michigan. Despite her final withdrawal from the campaign due to health reasons, it revealed a different side of her, a champion for social justice. Next, the pivotal moment arrived, meeting actor Timothy Busfield in 2013. Things seemed different this time. They had a low-key wedding, downsized to a cottage in the Catskills, and began their life together. What Melissa really wanted was to return to a simpler time. She was being quite serious about it. Collaboratively, they cultivate crops, tend to hens, and frequently endure periods devoid of Wi-Fi. She got rid of the Hollywood ideal of being young and flawless. After getting her breast implants removed, she decided she no longer wanted any kind of cosmetic surgery. She spoke to people about her newfound self-acceptance. "Look at this, my face. This is me." It was a strong statement, particularly in a field where women are often pressured to hide their imperfections. Over the past few years, she has refocused her career on storytelling and writing rather than acting. Back to the Prairie, her memoir published in 2022, describes her therapeutic retreat to the countryside. His audience went wild. She recounted overcoming severe winters, learning to live with less, and restoring a dilapidated house. The narrative lacked glitz. Because it was genuine, it struck a chord with viewers. Plus, she came up with fresh approaches to making an impact. Melissa started being more candid about issues related to aging, body image, and mental health. The freedom to be oneself, with dirt under one's nails and a calm spirit, were the things she hoped young women would take away from her story. In addition to being a mother, wife, and writer, Melissa Gilbert is now known as Laura Ingalls. In a world where lies abound, she speaks truthfully. She had a public upbringing, endured adversity, found healing, and ultimately opted to live authentically rather than pursue stardom. Both the enduring popularity of Little House on the Prairie reruns and the devotion of viewers to Laura and Almanzo are major factors. An imperfect life lived with courage, kindness, and strength is her true legacy. She teaches us that the real story begins when the show ends, even if your life begins on TV. In your opinion, what were Melissa's comments? Please inform us in the space provided. Click the like and subscribe buttons if you found today's video entertaining. Just click on the video that's currently playing on your screen to see more videos like this.